Hi everyone. Today I'm here for a chit chat, a bit of a chit chat, just to talk a little bit about life. And I was thinking the other day of how my journey back to the cross was. I wasn't really, like I said, I think in a previous video, I wasn't aware that I was lost. I thought I was still walking well within the light, ample room on both sides, only for my world to come crumbling down and God putting his safety net right under me before I could hit the ground. He was right there, like his hands were right there, and he received me and was like, turn to me, like you have no idea what kind of trouble you're in. You have no idea what kind of dire situation this could end up being. Just turn to me. And for whatever reason, I listened. I remember thinking the impetus for my hesitation is that I had bought into the lie that God is indifferent, that he loves us, but he's in heaven and we're here on earth, and he's left us to figure out, he's left men to their affairs. And once we get back to heaven, we'll face judgment day and give an account of how we spent our lives. So having bought into that lie, it was hard for me to believe that the God of heaven would be speaking to me, that he would be guiding me and directing me, or that even that he would be pursuing me and calling me. Mine is what I would call the relentless pursuit, because he was pursuing me relentlessly. I could remember Bible verses. I could remember the knocking at the door of my heart. I could remember to not harden your heart, to come to me, that I stand at the door and I knock. I could remember all these verses, and at one point I remember just thinking something supernatural is happening here. And so I did go on my knees and I asked, and I remember saying, I surrender, I think you're speaking to me, I surrender and I give it all up. I give my life over to you. And that was the beginning of my walk back into the place of plenty. I think there's a verse in the Bible that says, your boundaries have fallen around me in pleasant places. That was the beginning of my pleasant place. But then I was thinking that here's the thing, that even once you come to Christianity, it's still treacherous out there. You could be within Christianity and you could still find that you lost your way even within Christianity. Because for me, my Advent was a ministry. And this was a ministry that would catch people that were in this particular situation and then minister to them. And I was part of this ministry for a number of years. I have to give them credit for really grounding me in the faith, because the rigorous training that I had to undergo, the first of which was character formation, there was so much training in terms of obedience to God, in terms of a simplistic faith, just believing God, taking him at his word and doing that which you're called to do. And I think I was under this ministry for a 2-year period where I was constantly, every day, learning how to speak to God, learning how to speak to the Father, learning how to hear the Father, learning how to obey whenever I had the Father. And it really taught me how to turn the other cheek. It taught me how to submit my thoughts to God, how to take every thought captive. It taught me how to not conform to the world, how to be renewed in my mind. I spent copious amounts of hours just renewing my mind. I had particular Bible verses that I memorized. I even got out flashcards and I wrote these Bible verses on flashcards so I would memorize them. And I remember wondering if anything was happening, but I remember trusting the process. And then I remember when temptation started to come, and this was in the form of guarding my tongue. This was in the form of holding my tongue, that when I feel like I'm assaulted by heavy words or unpleasantness, that I'd just be able to let it pass and maintain an even keeled attitude through everything. And I remember the Lord was strengthening my hind legs so I could stand on mountains and not be shaken. I remember him preparing a table for me in front of my enemies. I remember feasting at the Lord's table. I remember him assuring me that I was his daughter, that I was the king's daughter, and that I have to hold myself to a certain standard. And I remember the training going through that. But on the flip side of that is that also there was quite a lot of restrictions in terms of moving forward. There was some restrictions in terms of liberty. At the time, I didn't even see this as a negative thing, because I just thought, well, it is what it is. I was learning the Bible. I didn't question much of it because, again, I already live a very straight and narrow life. And so nothing seemed out of the ordinary for me, and I continued on that path. And it really formed the foundation of my belief in that instance. But it also had restrictions, and it would say things like women cannot do this. I mean, it would really specify on the verses that we should focus on as women, that we should focus on verses about caring for the homes, and verses about just things that basically there was a lot of exclusions. Yeah, so as time progressed, I realized that there was a lot of gender based exclusions, which is something I've never really dealt with in my life when it comes to my walk with God. And so over time, I began to move away from that, thankfully. I began to move away from that because God is genderless, God is a spirit. And the way I understand the Bible, women are not really excluded the way patriarchy has decided to interpret most of the Bible. So I was able to, by God's grace, move away from that. And then after that, I ended up doing Bible study again with a certain group. And that was very helpful. I went really deep with that, which really lay the foundation for how I understand a lot of Bible hermeneutics. I got a lot of that from studying together with that group. And again, that lasted for an additional two years, I believe. And my son and I were taking the class separately because, again, they believed women would teach women and men would teach men. And so we were kind of still under that similar restriction in that sense. But we were able, like they say, when you're given a grain, you should be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. And we're able to do that, take what we needed to take from it and carry it forward as the Lord would lead. While all of that was going on, my son and I were very busy studying apologetics. Again, we had a lot of questions when it came to the origins of the Bible, the veracity of the Bible. Was it fallible or infallible? Who wrote the Bible? Over what period of time was it written? How was it compiled? Who decided what books to include? And so my son and I, it was during the pandemic, so we were home together the entire time we're home for 2 years actually, my son and I, and we just went through the whole study. We did a lot of research on YouTube. We watched countless videos. We sat for hours of discourse and debate between each other. We listen to all apologetics. We listen to C.S. Lewis. We listen to Frank Turek. We listen to Dr. Craig. We listened to even John White. We listened to Knetch, I think his name. He's from Connecticut, where we live. The guy that goes around campuses having students challenge him and then him like answering apologetics questions. We listened to Today Christianity. We listened to a lot of channels. Another thing we did was really spend time to understand the conflict in the Middle East. We really tried to trace the story from the Bible to now. And then there was a TikTok account that really helped me. It's called Prohibition Theology. That's where I was able to understand the Noah covenant. I was able to understand the Abrahamic covenant, and then the time-bound Mosaic covenant, which was just supposed to usher in the coming of the Messiah, and then it was to be dissolved, though it persists for whatever reasons. And so that ended up giving me a firm foundation of the things that I come to believe to be the truth of God. But I cannot downplay my sister's influence on my worldview, because while a lot of things sought to limit me in terms of how wide my belief was or the freedoms that are found therein within Christ, my greatest example of that was my sister. I was able to see how well she lives her life. I was able to see how well balanced her life seemed to be. And with that, I was able to weed out some of the excesses within my life. I started to kind of realize this is going a bit more dogmatic. This is a bit more religiosity. This is a bit more restrictive. I began to understand principles of God that we're truly saved unto freedom, that he whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And so I was able to expand my understanding, but I was also able to enlarge the place within which I felt I had in my walk with God, and it brought such freedom and such liberty. And even now, as we speak, I'm continuing to grow in the faith, and I'm continuing to understand principles of the Bible. I'm continuing to go even deeper in hermeneutics. I'm understanding the principles of fast mention and just many other things that are very helpful in steadying me in my walk. So that is kind of a synopsis of my journey so far, and I know it's only just the beginning. There's a lot more to go, and I cannot wait to see the unfolding, and I'm so glad that you're going to be here for it. And if it were up to me, we'll definitely grow together. Okay, bye.